Thank you, Madam Chair, for ensuring that oversight continues to be a priority for this committee. We have a government structure to work one way for banks and businesses and another for consumers and working families. That's why I push the Federal Reserve to provide everyday consumers with the same settlement services it already provides for banks. Working families shouldn't have to wait 3 to 5 days for a check to clear. Now, Mr. Quarles, you were the lone dissenter in the Federal Reserve's decision to develop FedNow, which was heralded by small businesses and consumer groups alike. I do believe how one chooses to spend their time reflects what they value, and more importantly, who they value. Mr. Quarles, over the weekend, the New York Times published a profile on your regulatory approach. And notably, you have chosen to spend your time in this role in your first 21 months in office. You met with Goldman Sachs 24 times. You met with J.P. Morgan 19 times. You met with Morgan Stanley 17 times, and with Citi 12 times. In that same time frame, how many consumer groups did you meet with?
Over the course of my first 21 months in office, I met with approximately, at a conservative estimate, 15 to 20,000 people. The great majority of those, you've noted that 26 of those were Goldman Sachs, out of 15 to 20,000 people. That's, again, at a conservative estimate, 1/100% of my time was spent with that, and the other 99.86% of my time was spent with others.
Okay, consumers? Because again, who you spend your time with speaks to who you value.
Yes.
And the fact that you were the lone dissenting voice about whether or not to expedite payments of hardworking Americans so that they can get what they've worked for in a 3 to 5 day period, something banks already have, I think is indicative of something else. But
ma'am, I dissented because I believe that the proposal would harm those consumers.
Reclaiming my time, again, you were the lone dissenter on that, and I asked, did you engage consumer groups, and you didn't indicate any. The Federal Reserve was noticeably missing from the recently issued notice of proposed rulemaking on the Community Reinvestment Act. A strong CRA is a top priority for civil rights groups and many members of this committee. Mr. Quarles, how many civil rights groups did you meet with in those first 21 months? Can you just name a few specifically?
I met with many.
ACLU?
I don't remember the names of them. I met with many, and we'll be happy to provide that information.
I would like to see that list, but I am incredulous that you cannot immediately cite civil rights organizations, knowing that what a priority a strong CRA is to these groups, and that you can't immediately detail or enumerate that you've met with any of them. So I look forward to that list. When Chairman Powell was before us, I called on the Fed to better reflect the interests of hardworking American people, a sentiment I echo to all regulators, including those who could not make it here today. However, when large banks have a greater access to the Federal Reserve's leadership than even sitting members of Congress, we have a problem. I want to be clear. My colleagues and I are paying very close attention. Wherever gaps in oversight exist, we fill them. Hundreds of thousands of hourly employees doing the everyday business of banking, opening checking accounts, originating loans, detecting fraud, and money laundering, all while complying regulations. However, we have seen how extractive sales quotas and performance metrics can result in disaster for low-level employees. The Wells Fargo scandal is a prime example of this. So, Ms. McWilliams, yes or no, do you track banks' employment practices and metrics?
When you say employment practices, can you elaborate?
Well, some that I already cited. I spoke about just the everyday business and practices of banking, opening checking accounts, originating loans, detecting fraud, money laundering, and again, these extractive sales quotas and these performance metrics, according to those practices, can result in disaster for low-level employees.
I don't disagree with you that certain bank culture can certainly create problems for both the employees and their customers. In terms of tracking performance, we do have supervisory tools through which we look at the number of accounts opened. We look at how banks are conducting the business of banking. We make sure that they comply with the consumer protection laws and statutes.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I'm running out of time. Mr. Quarles, do you track banks' employment practices and metrics?
We do.
Okay. And so in the wake of that scandal, thousands of frontline workers who lost their jobs while only a handful of more senior level employees face similar consequences. That is why, with the support of the AFL-CIO and the communications worker, I'm sorry, that's my time? Okay. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.